Welcome to the Burnout Room, a podcast about burnout, effective leadership, and wellness in nonprofits.
I'm Dr. Courtney Keim, a workplace wellness researcher and professor.
And I'm Sarah Burris, an organizational leader and nonprofit wellness advocate.
Whether you're facing burnout, leading a team, or working to build a healthier workplace, this is your space to find support, community, and solutions for any organization.
So today we're going to have an in-depth conversation about psychological safety. And to get us started, I'm going to throw it over to Courtney.
Sarah, what do you think of when you think of the term psych safety? And before you answer that, take off any of your psychology knowledge that you might think of and just pretend like you are at an average family get together and somebody who doesn't know anything about psychology hears the words psychological safety together. What do you think is the thing that most people think of from that phrase?
Well, I mean, if I were to take off those hats that seem to be permanently glued to the top of my head, I would say that, I would break those words apart. So psychological has something to do with our mindset, our brains, our mental health. And then we've got safety, which is pretty self-explanatory, not being caught on fire or being hit with an anvil. So,
Sure.
making sure our brains don't get hit with anvils. That's what I'm going with.
Sure. Okay, so you're thinking of and I may be dating myself here, but Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes cartoons,
Yes.
all of those things. You don't want anvils falling on anyone, no major tricks being played by the Roadrunner, nothing like that happening. But instead of physical body, you're thinking brain, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I really like that. And I think that that is partly what psychological safety is, but it's not, I think, what most people think it is, which is this protecting your mental health from anything negative.
Okay.
When we think about things that happen in the workplace, days are not always sunshiny and rosy. Sometimes bad things happen, as you and I both know. Life will life sometimes. And there can be instances in a workplace where bad decisions are made. There can be places where conflict can occur. There can be places where arguments might happen, where a supervisor might tell you something that you don't want to hear. Those are all things that could happen that could be in some regards seen as bad for your mental health.
That's really interesting. The thing that pops into my head immediately is, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. You mentioned conflict. So if you're a leader and you sense that there's internal conflict going on within your staff, like maybe you have a person who's more brash or doesn't have as much tact or, whatever. So are you saying that psychological safety is could be manifested by a person in the workplace who maybe doesn't make enough space or give enough grace when people are making mistakes or saying something that they maybe don't agree with? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, psychological safety is not creating a workplace with no conflict.
Okay.
So psychological safety is creating a workspace where conflict can occur. It's creating a workspace where people can make mistakes. It is having people be able to come in and do their job in ways where they might do it wrong. They might fail. So it's not, I'm creating a workspace where nobody ever argues. Now, you don't take that to the other extreme, though, and say, well, then therefore psychological safety is a workplace where people are uncivil and they're yelling at each other constantly and there's a lot of tension. It's not that. We're not saying that psychological safety necessarily means you must have conflict, but it's the good kind of conflict that we think about. So we think about different kinds of conflict. You can talk about task conflict, which is two people conflicting about, arguing about, disagreeing about how some task should get done. Mm-hmm. We have the same goals in mind in our organization, but you have your way that you think is the best way to accomplish those goals. I have mine. We're we're conflicting with each other about that. Versus that's good kind of conflict that can happen in an organization. So psych safety is having a workspace where those kinds of conflicts can occur. The bad kind of conflict would be relationship conflict, which is I'm brash, I'm mean and I'm going to put you down because I don't like you and I hate you and I am going to be a mean person to you. And that is the bad kind of conflict. We would not necessarily equate that kind of conflict with psychological safety.
I like that. So when you were talking about task conflict, we run into that all the time in our nonprofit where we've got folks who have been doing something in a particular way, and then maybe we're training somebody new, and they're like, "Oh, well, hey, can we just do it like this?" Because maybe they have different skills or knowledge or what have you. So that's a good kind of conflict. We're okay as leaders with people disagreeing on how a task should be done, and as long as the task gets done, that is fine. What's not okay is if that like maybe toxic person I was talking about earlier is making personal attacks against someone for whatever reason or retaliating against someone um, for saying something they didn't care for.
Yeah, the relationship conflict is almost never productive. Sometimes task conflict can lead, having two people disagree can lead to different solutions, more creative solutions. If not
Mm-hmm.
everybody is just following along with everybody says, oh, yes, that's what we should do. That's what we should do. If somebody's disagreeing with that, it can lead to a more creative solution that happens. And when we think about like psychological safety, if any of our listeners have heard this term, they probably know Amy Edmondson, who wrote her seminal article about psych safety in 1999. But really, this is a term that has been around for a really long time. So, any of our listeners who know who Carl Rogers is, Carl Rogers was a humanistic psychologist. When I look at videos of Carl Rogers, and there are many of them that are on YouTube, if you go look, he so reminds me of my grandpa. Like the Venn diagram overlap of my grandpa and Carl Rogers and Mr. Rogers, like Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, they're all overlapping a lot because these are like incredibly kind, decent men. And Carl Rogers, if you go to therapy today, you probably are going to a therapist who is influenced by this kind of Rogerian approach to therapy, which is this genuine concern for the client and empathy as central core parts of therapy. So his whole purpose of talking about psychological safety was really thinking about like us being the best humans that we can possibly be. So you're right. This doesn't sound too
Common
bad, does it?
sense.
Yeah, this sounds great. And so I think what Amy Edmondson was able to do, and then the term, goes, for a few decades after that from the 1950s on. But what Amy Edmondson is able to do is take that concept of creating spaces where we feel safe, but
Mm-hmm.
seeing how does that manifest itself in the workspace. I don't know about you, but there have been a few times when I have gone to therapy where I might be confronted with something or a thought, an idea that is not something that I want to think about, or it may be a little confrontational in a way, or it like is challenging me to try things in a different way. It's not when my therapist decatastrophizes, like that's she's not going along with my silly anxiety and she's confronting it. And there might be some conflict that happens there. So certainly there's something about this idea of creating a safe space, but it's a space where you can grow, where you can be challenged, and where you can try new things. And so you really can kind of see the progression of Carl Rogers and the kind of therapeutic approach going down into the workplace with Amy Edmondson.
That's really fascinating. I love the fact that your grandpa and Carl Rogers and Fred Rogers are in a Venn diagram of awesome poppies. That's what I call
Yeah.
them. Older gentlemen who are
Yes.
just like lovely human beings. They're poppies. So I am very happy to hear that Carl Rogers started us down this path today. Thank you, Carl. Um,
Yes. Thank you.
so so Amy Edmondson is out there. I saw a couple of YouTube videos of her and she's fantastic. Like if I'll link a couple in the show notes here so folks can check her out because she is talking about some really amazing stuff when it comes to workplace and psychological safety.
Yes. And she has done a ton of research now. After all these years, she's looked at psych safety in a lot of different kinds of organizations. I believe that she did a lot of stuff in healthcare initially, but this is a topic that she's been able to replicate in a lot of different industries. One of the one of the articles or research projects that talks about psych safety talked about this with Google during the early kind of Google days. Google is a very team-based organization. So you would
Hmm.
have like a team of people who would work on the Google Doodle. Like there was a whole team of people that just like figure out what the doodle is going to be for the day. So there's all these different work teams that happen in Google. Some of those work teams were more effective than others. And
Sure.
so when the good old IO psychologists and the folks who were doing the data analytics for Google, when they started looking at like, what is the thing that can make us predict whether or not a work team is going to be really successful or not, they were looking at all of the things that you might imagine, things like team cohesiveness, or they might look at the supervisor of the team and the kind of feedback. And they found that it was none of those things that was the most predictive. The single most predictive thing about who was going to be a good work team at Google was this concept of psychological safety, which is, can I come in with my identity, my perspectives, my contributions into this team, and can I make mistakes without fear of retribution? Can I get into that risky place and be my true self in with this team of people, and be able to come up with some really kind of creative, awesome solutions? Amy Edmondson's seminal article that I mentioned, Psych Safety and Learning Behavior in Work Teams in 1999. So this really was a topic that was focused on really interactive teams working together, and what is that secret sauce that helps that team be effective. And it was not lack of conflict. It was not anything related to the supervisor. It was this feeling of, can I come in and try these things out and fail, and I'm still okay, and my coworkers still accept me, and I'm still respected and valued, and I have this opportunity to now learn from this mistake that I've made.
So you're talking about secret sauce. What what might be the ingredients for this sauce, Courtney? How do leaders cultivate a culture in their organization of psychological safety?
Yeah, this is such a great question. Um, it's not like the KFC secret recipe. So
Yeah,
I
we'll
think,
tell you.
yeah, well, it's not hidden. Um, do you know that that like KFC supposedly only follows like 13 people or something on social media? I don't know. There's like this lore that if you that because there's supposedly like 13 ingredients into their secret recipe for their fried chicken. I don't know.
What
Uh,
an Easter egg.
you
Look
you
at you,
don't have to.
KFC.
Thanks, KFC. You don't have to like try to go to some hidden secret room to find this. This is like actually all over the literature. It's all over the research. It's going to be things that probably don't surprise you, such as if a leader is seen as being trustworthy. And we know that
Yeah.
organizational trust is centered in communication.
Mm-hmm.
Frequent and open communication is critical to organizational trust. So, the extent to which you as a leader are trustworthy and open and communicating is incredibly important. Consistent, clear communication. Communication, of course, being that two-way street. So the leader is also listening to you when you are talking about, not just they are giving all of the information, but they're receiving that information as well. So being a really good communicator is really critical to that. Inclusiveness, transformational leadership. So, really being the kind of leader who's not micromanaging, but who
Mm.
trusts their employees and who sees failures as an opportunity for learning and growth.
I think that is a big one for nonprofits because we work, we are passionate people. We work in mission driven organizations. And sometimes the thought of passing off a thing to somebody else, delegating a task to somebody else, and not being like on top of them while they're doing the task is hard because you know how important it is for that task to be done correctly because people externally from your organization are depending on it. So I think that that is really a piece that organizational leaders and nonprofits specifically have to pay really close attention to, not micromanaging. You hired your people because they had the skills and knowledge that you needed. You're cultivating the skills and knowledge in those people. And so we really do need to kind of let folks do those jobs, try those tasks, and with psychological safety, if they make mistakes with those tasks, give them grace so that they can figure out how to do it right the next time.
Yes, I think you are absolutely right that for nonprofits, especially, this is a critically important thing that must be present in an organization in order for that organization to be running effectively, especially as we've talked about in other episodes before, when you are running a tight ship. When
Mm-hmm.
you have very few staff and you are trying to protect your staff, like, you want to give them the space to do the work that needs to be done and not be micromanaging them. There's nothing worse than being micromanaged. And I probably should use this as an opportunity to apologize to my husband, because very recently, I do believe the words that came out of my mouth to him one day when we were cleaning the kitchen was, "I know how to load a dishwasher."
I got it, sir. Thank you.
Because I felt in the moment like I was being micromanaged, because he was explaining to me how to put things in the dishwasher, and I was like, I know. So this is how we feel as humans when somebody is over us and is telling to do it this way, do it this way, do it. Like, that kind of micromanaging means you don't trust me. You don't trust me
Yes.
to do it right. You don't think I'm going to do the right thing. So giving the people space to just do their work without being so concerned over, oh, we only have one person doing this job, I better micromanage her to make sure that she's doing it right because we're so lean. We only have that one person. You just have to kind of take a step back and let them do it.
Yeah. And I mean, you can implement check-ins and things like that to if you are feeling anxious about it when they're doing the task for the first time, but really your people need to become the experts that you need them to be, and they can't do that if you're holding their hands all the time.
Yeah. Another thing that leaders need to do is modeling the behavior.
Yes.
Leaders need to make mistakes, and they need to
Yes.
make mistakes that are open and honest. So if you want your folks to be able to take risks in a safe way, then you have to be able to do that yourself. You've got to be willing to kind of put your ego on the line a little bit and try something new and own up to when you fall short, when you fail, and to let the people know, like, oh, it's okay here
Yeah.
if I try something new and it doesn't work out 100%.
That is a really important point. Like it's like setting the example for your people in all like in many facets, not just in psychological safety terms, but all across the board. Like being an open, transparent, open door boss makes a huge difference. I've had bosses that are not that way, and it makes doing the work so much more difficult. And you're on edge all the time because you're afraid if you make a mistake, you're going to get in trouble for it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I'm trying to think about, like, I have a couple of examples of times when I have been in a space where I have made mistakes
Mm-hmm.
that ended, like, where I've had low psychological safety, and I've also have a few examples of times when I have high psychological safety. I don't know, it would now be a good time for me to share some of those examples.
I think story time sounds great, Court.
Okay. Okay. Let me tell you stories. So, one of the stories I will tell relates back to one of the restaurants that I worked at. So, I consider myself to be a very meticulous, organized person. And when I was working at this brewery that was in downtown Memphis, I was taking the orders for a very large, like, wedding rehearsal dinner. So we had like a party room, and I knew that this was going to be a very good night for me, like, financially. I was going to make a great tip off of this table. And it was a really big table. And instead of having, 5 people, it was just like me and one other person. So it was like two strongest servers on the floor. They get to do this wedding reception party. And they had a fixed menu. So there were only like 4 dishes that they could choose from. And a very long table, as you can imagine, for a wedding rehearsal dinner. I went around the table meticulously noting, did they want the steak? Did they want the chicken? How did they want their steak cooked? I had the seat numbers for every single person on the table. And because there were so many people that were there, I had multiple pieces of paper that had the table orders on them. And I went back to the server's station, And I go and meticulously, not once, but twice counted how many medium steaks do I need? How many medium rare steaks do I need? Like, and let me go back and double check it again just to make sure before I tell the sous chef so he can tell the chef, like, how many steaks do they need to drop, all this. Meticulous. At some point, I realize that I've counted the same page twice.
Oh no.
So instead of counting, let's say, page 1 and 2, I counted page 1 twice.
Twice. No.
Yes. And they had already dropped all of the steaks were on the grill. And what do you do in that moment? What do you do? Do I just act like it didn't happen and just let the steaks come out and just drop food in front of people that they didn't order? I knew that in that moment, I could have been fired for that, maybe, right? Like
Mhm.
I could lose my job. They could make me pay for the steaks. There's all kinds of, I could get yelled at by my boss. Like there are 10 different options that could happen in the moment. I could lose my reputation as being an organized person. I could lose my status as being one of the top servers in this restaurant,
Mhm.
not able to work these parties anymore. Like there's a lot of really bad things that could happen if I admit this mistake. But I also knew that I had time still to fix it.
Yeah.
So I had to make a really quick decision in that moment of, do I tell the chef or do I just walk out the door and quit? I guess those were probably my two options that I had. So I went over to the sous chef who was running the line, and I said, "Hey, I messed up." And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I counted the wrong," and I held the slips up, and I was like, "I counted the wrong slip twice." And he was not very happy with me.
Yeah.
And he probably used some curse words, not at me, but at the situation, which is very common to happen in restaurants. This is something that you do hear a lot of curse words in restaurants.
Colorful language. Uh-huh.
And he immediately fixed it. He like yelled at the cooks and was like, "Hey, don't do this, pull this." And we fixed it and we got the food out, and the party never knew. They never knew. And I was ready for whatever punishment was going to come my way. Do I have to pay for these steaks that are on the grill that are now going to go into the trash? I now know that I have made the cooks' jobs harder because they've already got all of this food that they have been cooking that now they're having to cook other food. And I don't remember, I hope that I probably at the end of the shift apologized to the cooks. Maybe I bought them a drink after the shift was over. I don't know what I did. Maybe my memory will be better than my actual behavior. But I feel like that was a moment where it was like, look, it's okay here to fess up that you failed. It's okay
Yeah.
here to realize that you have made a mistake, and it's okay to fix this mistake and to learn from this and to learn a better way so that the next time I'm waiting on a big party, what is like, I will never, this mistake is seared into my brain, and I will
Mhm.
never make this mistake again because I now have had this opportunity to learn and grow from it.
That's really interesting. I think the thing that pops into my head is little Courtney, let's call her little Courtney, who's
Little
doing
Courtney.
little Courtney, love and little Courtney. So she is at this restaurant and she's sitting there like, do I do this or do I do that? So do you think that little Courtney felt like it was going to go one way or the other? Like I'm curious if you had a sense, like any sense whatsoever, that you were not going to be fired for this mistake, or was it kind of like up in the air? And if it
Yeah.
was up in the air, are there things that organizational leaders can take from this conversation to make sure that their folks know that if
Yep.
they're at a crossroads like that, that they can just be honest and transparent and that they're going to be okay if they do that?
This is a excellent question. And I think the reason why I felt like I wasn't going to get in trouble was because of da 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 da. It was my manager. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that the manager was going to have my back. And how
Yeah.
do I know that? Because he had had my back in other instances. And this is the kind of manager that I have given this example before to my students. If I walked into that restaurant and the manager who I had a great relationship with would ask me, like, hey, will you help me? We got to go outside and get the patio umbrellas off the patio and bring them inside. It's about to rain. And I would say, absolutely, I'll go help you.
Hmm.
Now, the other manager who I did not like, who was very mean and we did not trust, he would say, why are you guys standing around not doing any work? Go outside and get the patio umbrellas and bring them in. And those are two different approaches.
Yeah.
One approach was, will you help me? I'm going to do this work. I need your help. Versus the other manager that was very more directive and you guys better do this or else. I knew that the manager that had my back, it was not going to fire me over this mistake that I made, that this was a fixable mistake and I would be okay. So it absolutely went back to, I knew that there was a manager at that organization that had my back that was going to be there for me. I can give you another example of a time when a manager didn't have my back.
I mean, we probably all have those examples, but please continue to spill all the tea.
Okay, this is another man, I'm spilling all the tea about my
I'm loving it.
workplaces. Okay.
Keep it
So
going.
this was a different restaurant that I worked at. This was the place that I worked at before I worked at the brewery. And this was a restaurant that I had worked at for a very long time, like probably 3, 4 years. Like I had worked at the same place for a long time. I had worked my way up. I was, one of the top servers. I had gotten numerous awards, top gift card person, like all of these things. I would get the pick of the section for the night. Worked my way up to bartender eventually. And I will admit that I am a very, even littler Courtney at this time, just a little college student who was trying to like feel like a big fish, but I was still a little fish. So I was working bartending one night and this woman came by and she ordered a to go order. And I was like, sure, you can order something to go. Fine, whatever. That's where you ordered to go food. This was way back in the day when 20 something years ago when we didn't have like a to go section. So you would just go
Uh,
up to the bar. And
Free DoorDash, everyone.
this was pre DoorDash. So you'll have to, yeah. Do I have to explain to our listeners what to go is? Like, do they know?
No, I
Okay.
mean, I
Yeah.
to go just means you're ordering your food to go home and eat in your sweatpants. Everyone, that is to
Yes.
go.
But you
TLDR.
couldn't order it from your couch. You had to go up to the restaurant and you had to order it in person. So this lady comes up and I'm the only bartender. It's a weeknight. It's probably like a Tuesday night. So I'm the only bartender. So I'm having to take care of to-go orders. I'm having to take care of all of the customers that are at the bar eating, drinking, and I'm also having to make all of the drinks for the service well. And so it was not like super busy, but it was busy enough that I was just kind of, 14 different directions all at once. This woman comes up. She orders this pretty big to go order. And then she says, do you take traveler's checks? And I was like, yes, we take traveler's checks. Now, Sarah, I knew that we took traveler's checks, but I am going to admit something to you that I never admitted to anybody at this restaurant when this happened. I didn't know what a traveler's check looked like.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't know what that was. I was like, I know what checks look like, but
Yeah.
I don't know what an actual traveler's check looks like. I had
Mhm.
never traveled anywhere with a traveler's check. I hadn't gone out of the country. I hadn't needed a traveler's check before. So this
Mhm.
idea of like the bank, you go and get this check that's like guaranteed to have the money in it kind of thing. So when she
Right.
said, do you take traveler's check? I said, yes. So when she handed me the piece of paper, I didn't know what that was. I was just like, okay, I guess this is a traveler's check. I don't know. In the moment, what I should have done is I should have gone to the manager and I should have said, I don't know what a traveler's check looks like. I'm an idiot. I'm a moron. I'm so dumb. Like, oh my God. Like all those things that were going in my head about, you can't
Yeah.
admit though, like, why would they let you be a bartender if you don't even know what a traveler's check looks like? But I did not do that. And instead, I took the traveler's check and I gave her back cash in change.
Mm.
And then she left and she paid for the food and she said, I'm going to come back and get the food when it's done in a little bit. And I said, okay. And then she left, and the food sat there, and it sat there, and it sat there, and it sat there. And it was, yeah. And she never came back. So
What a
I was like,
baby.
this is so bizarre. And then I'm like, then of course I've got all this to go food at the bar. So I start giving it, it's like closing time. So I start giving it away to people who like servers,
Yeah.
other people who work there. I'm like, hey, there's a salad. Like, does anybody want to take a salad home? And then I grabbed a salad for me to take home as well. And then I go to cash out my cash drawer at the end of the night. And the manager, who again didn't trust, didn't have a relationship with, didn't feel comfortable going and telling him that I didn't know what a traveler's check looked like. He takes the check out of the cash drawer and he says, "What is this?" And I said, "A traveler's check." And he basically, in my memory, again, I don't know, this was 20 years ago, but in my memory, what I remember him saying is, "You idiot, this isn't a traveler's check. This is fake." And I
Well,
was like,
sorry, maybe you should have trained your servers on what a traveler's check is. If it's a method of payment that you offer at your restaurant. Sorry, continue. I just needed to rant about
okay.
that for a second. Poor tiny Courtney, little Courtney needed an advocate. And here I am 20 years later saying, boo, manager, sir. Sorry, keep going.
Yes, thank you so much for supporting little previous Courtney in that moment because that is not, I did not have an advocate. And I was like, oh, dang, that sucks. Yeah, she totally scammed me. Like that woman scammed me. I can't believe that that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was felt bad about it. So yeah, now the rest of the story. So I come into work the next day and they called me into the office and they said, "You're fired."
Mm.
They said, essentially, they were like, "We can't keep you because you took this fake traveler's check." And the implication was I knew that it was fake and that I
Because you
did,
handed out the food.
yeah, because I took the salad home. So therefore, that I would have risked, like, I'd been working there for like 4 years. Like it was right
This
at
is
the
my
end.
severance salad. What did they think?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Um, and so, yeah, so I lost my job. I lost my job because I took fake traveler's check that I didn't know was fake and found myself all of a sudden without an income. And it was like the end of the spring semester and I didn't have a job and it was really awful and miserable. But I got through it and I was able to, I did some catering work in between to be able to like pay my bills. And I learned obviously a lot from that lesson. Did I know in the time that I was in a low psychological safety environment? No, I had no idea that that was what was wrong. I beat myself up over
Yeah,
that mistake for a very long time.
I
For a
bet.
very long time. Even embarrassed like today to admit that that happened. But you immediately were like, why weren't you trained? Why, they never trained you. Like, why did they not have your back? Why did they not create an atmosphere where I felt like I could have gone to the manager and said, I need help. Can you help me with this? But I
Right.
didn't feel like that was a place where I could do that. I didn't feel safe at all. I didn't feel safe making a mistake. And I did make a mistake and I got fired. So what signal is that sending to everybody else who worked there after I left? Is that
Yeah,
even the best? I don't want to say I was the best employee, but I was a really
you were.
hardworking employee. I was loyal to that place. I'd been there for a long time. And they fired me over a simple mistake. And so that really is going to now set a precedent and build a culture of like fear, retaliation that I'm pretty sure nobody else in that workplace felt psychologically safe after I left.
Well, that was, you said fear, and that's what's been running through my mind too, is just like those fear based leadership tactics that are frankly old and tired and clearly do not work. Like, you don't get the most out of your people when they're afraid, when they're scared they're going to lose their jobs. Like, we get the most out of people when they feel like they can do their work without, I mean, honestly, with psychological safety. I can make a mistake and I know I can go to my boss right now and say, hey, I screwed this up. And he'd be like, dang, that stinks. Like, let's figure out how to move forward from it. It's really
Yep.
not hard to be just like a kind, courteous person and understand that we are all human beings. Our teams, for right now, are all human beings. And we should treat each other like we're human beings. We make mistakes. It's okay that we make mistakes. We figure out how to move forward and we do that. I just, the fear-based leadership stuff just irks me real bad.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that too, because Amy Edmondson talks about one of the major signs of does a workplace have low levels of psychological safety is fear of reporting failures. So if you have a fear of saying that you messed up or how you messed up, that can be a really big indicator that you are in a workspace that has low levels of psych safety. So the fact that I knew in the when I was at the brewery with all the steaks that were ordered incorrectly, I knew I had messed up, but I didn't feel afraid to tell anybody. I was in a high psych safety environment without even realizing it. The other restaurant that I worked at, I made a mistake and knew that it was a mistake, but still didn't feel like I was comfortable enough being able to tell anybody about it. And that was, I think, a really big sign of what the workplace culture of that organization was. So really, it was probably good they fired me because I needed to get out of that really bad place anyway, right?
Definitely. Like I'm sitting here thinking about, so we talked a little bit about what leaders can do to cultivate psychological safety within their organizations. But if you're an employee or a staff person in an organization that you feel has low psychological safety, is the only option to leave? Because
That's a
again, we're mission driven people, we're passionate
yeah.
people, we care about what we're doing. Is that the only option?
Yeah, that is a tough question to answer because I hate to tell somebody like you just got to quit your job when people are trying to make ends meet and pay their bills and they may not have other options. So, and I also don't want to leave people with this sense of there's no other hope for
Mm-hmm.
you. But
Right.
there's no denying the fact that the leader makes a world of difference into the level of psych safety that is allowed to happen. It is true that having good, supportive, social support, social connection, that team relationship, having good peer support is another like important piece of psych safety. But I think that there's only so much that your peers and your coworkers and colleagues can do to create a sense of it's safe to mess up here, it's safe to fail if the boss above you doesn't agree. And if you're all trying to hide your mistakes from the boss, yeah, that can be a really challenging environment to stay in. Hopefully, what can help is if leaders who might feel a tug or a tendency to do that micromanaging, or the leaders who might feel like that authoritarian drive is the right way to get people to do things, if we could convince them that
Mm-hmm.
the research is pretty clear that it's not that authoritarian kind of leadership that leads to these great outcomes. It's more of that transformational leadership style. It's more trust of your employees. It's really, thinking about how can I look to my employees not to punish them when they do something wrong, but how can I help them improve when they make mistakes? And can we all kind of more of that like positive reinforcement instead of focusing on diminishing the negative behaviors? It's focusing on the good behaviors that you want folks to have.
Would you mind putting on your board member hat for a second?
Oh,
Um,
sure.
So, is there any onus on boards of directors of nonprofits to ensure that the staff in those nonprofits have psychological safety? So, for instance, if you have a leader in your organization that is that authoritarian type mindset, is there a place where the board of directors then needs to step in and say, we need to restructure the way that we're doing things?
Yes, absolutely. I think that boards of directors certainly have a fiduciary responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't have an organization effectively meeting its mission and spending its money wisely if you have a leader in that organization who is being a terrible leader and micromanaging and not having good levels of psych safety. So I know that for our nonprofit, the board does evaluate the executive director every year. We are the ones that decide when we have an executive director or leadership position open. We are the ones who are doing that hiring, so to speak. And so it is on the onus is on the board of directors to be involved, not necessarily directly in the everyday management of staff, but ensuring that the leaders that they have in their organization are the right kind of leaders who are doing it in the right way to create high levels of psych safety.
So I guess that's a mechanism that a staff person could use. Like I know in our organization, there's a clear like hierarchy and as far as just like reporting and things go. So for me, if one of my subordinates was having a problem with my leadership, they would go to our executive director. If I'm having a problem with our executive director, I would go then to the chair of the board. So if you're a staff person and you feel like you have low psychological safety, maybe just see what the hierarchy is in your organization. And if there is somebody that you can go to that's higher up that might be able to be an advocate for you.
Absolutely. And especially if a lot of board of directors are, of course, not into the day to day operations of the organization. And so they may not know that the leader is engaging in behaviors that are leading to low levels of psych safety. They may not know that the leader is being micromanaging and that the culture is not one that is supportive. And so having staff reach out to the board, how can you like get rid of an executive director unless you know that they don't need to be there? Or how can you get them the kind of executive coaching or training that they need to be successful? You know that like 50% of all, about 50% of all people who are promoted into a manager position fail in that position. And that's
That
because they get no training.
yeah, just harkening back to my burnout story. Yes, I do know that a lot of managers fail because they didn't have the proper training ahead of time. Luckily, my boss figured that out and was like, "Here's some training." But I learned a lot from that situation and from failing from those situations. But yeah, that statistic surprises me none, Courtney,
Yeah.
because it was me. Luckily, I just had a nice place where people liked me and they helped me figure it out.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of people get promoted into leadership because they're good at their job.
Right.
But being good at your job down here at the staff level doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so the having leaders get promoted who are the kind of people who can provide clear, consistent communication, who can provide that transformational leadership style, people who understand how to listen and also how to speak clearly. Like some of those are things that you can be trained. I mean, this is why executive coaching is a thing and why people will pay
Right.
for executive coaching. It's just a fancy way of saying like management training. You're just training, people at high levels of an organization how to be good managers. But so much of that executive coaching is just like, how do I be a nice person? Like, how do I be a present person in conversation? How can I not be a jerk? Just don't be a jerk. As Sarah and I have said before,
Do not be a jerk.
just don't be
Kind,
a jerk.
kindly do not be a jerk. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, some of this does just feel like common sense to me, but also it's things that need to be done intentionally. And I just going back to what you said earlier, like a leader setting the example will make it clear to their staff that they're safe here to say the things they need to say, to get in conflict with others, to make mistakes. So it really does, like you mentioned, a supportive, good leader is instrumental in the success of the organization that you're in.
And I would say if you are a leader in a nonprofit, especially, how do you know if your employees are making mistakes?
If they're telling you they're making mistakes, would be my guess.
So if you need to know if people are trying new things and if they are learning and growing and being creative and messing up. So how do you know that? If all you're hearing is the perfect reports and I'm always doing everything at 100% absolutely perfectly, I would ask yourself like what are they not telling me and why are they scared to tell me that? And I think that I also have done research in job insecurity. So I do want to say that like it is a real fear and a legitimate fear to be worried about losing your job. I when I was working at the restaurant with the traveler's check situation, there were other people who had worked for that restaurant for a long time, who had survived lots of different managers coming in and out of that building, who were butting heads with the management that were the new managers that had come in. And those folks, I saw them one by one also get fired before me.
Mm.
And so I knew there was reason for me to be afraid
Hmm.
of losing my job.
So what you're saying is that innately in us there is a fear that we could lose our source of income, which is required in the society that we live in. Therefore, leaders, you do not need to add extra fear. We're already afraid.
Yes, I think most of us who are not independently wealthy are scared of losing our steady paychecks, and having that, and we can talk more about job insecurity maybe in a different episode. But
Yeah.
the job insecurity is a subjective phenomenon. So two different people in the same job can have different levels of this fear. So it really is like internalized
Mm-hmm.
about how much you fear that. But I think some people, some staff may be reluctant to tell their boss, I messed up, because they don't want to lose their jobs. So it really, the onus is not on the staff to fess up with all the ways that you're messing up. The onus is on the leader to
Mm-hmm.
ask their staff, like, am I giving you space to fail? Are we giving you space to take risks? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that like we want bartenders taking fake travelers checks. Like that's not the purpose. But what should have been present in that organization was when I wasn't sure about what to do and the lady handed me something, instead of saying like, "Oh, I can't go and ask my manager about this because I'll be seen in a negative light. He'll think that I'm stupid. Like I will
Mm-hmm.
lose my bartending gigs. And then if I don't get to bartend, that's less money than I'm making. And I'm not going to like all of those things start going through your head in that moment. So if you're not creating an environment for people to say like, where are you messing up? Like, how are you ever going to like evolve and change and have things get better? Like failing is such an important part of learning and growing. We have in our little reptilian brains up here. So in our very like in our hindbrain, midbrain, forebrain, right? So like in our very like hindbrain, midbrain area of our brain, very like old from an evolutionary perspective, you got that amygdala, and when you mess up, you've got like your brain is on fire, and that ancient part of your brain is saying, pay attention.
Mm.
Because think about like our ancestors. If our ancestors were foraging in the forest and they ate the berries that were poisonous, you don't want to forget that those are the poisonous berries.
Yeah.
You don't want to forget that this is, where the dangerous ravine is, where it, like there's all of you from an evolutionary perspective, we pay attention to mistakes because mistakes are an important way for us to know if we're safe and if we're not safe. So that kind of adrenaline that gets like seared in your brain when you make a mistake is an opportunity to grow. I can remember my Duolingo words a lot better when I'm trying to learn new words. If I get it wrong 3, 4, 5 times, I'm like, okay, I've got it. And now I've got it. Like I'll never make that mistake again, right?
But also Duolingo, if you want to sponsor the burnout room, please contact me. Thanks.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology that's in Duolingo, of course. They know what they're doing there in
They
Duolingo, but
certainly
it's
know what
the
they're doing.
opportunity to be able to make mistakes
Mm-hmm.
is critically important. That's why I pay a silly amount for the Duolingo, whatever. I get the infinity mistakes so that I can make as many mistakes as I want to, and I don't have to worry about losing my time or whatever. So I feel like I'm learning Italian faster because I have the opportunity to make those mistakes. So when leaders see mistakes made as an organization as an opportunity for growth and
Mm-hmm.
learning, instead of like, aha, I've caught you, now I can punish you. So
Right.
don't see it as a punishment, but you see it as an opportunity. You're going to see all of those great outcomes that we associate with having psychological safety. If you remember, I said the best teams at Google were the teams with high psych safety.
Right. So if you want better output from your teams, if you want the people who are externally affected by the work that your nonprofit organization is doing, investing your time in cultivating a culture of psych safety is critically important.
Yes. Well said. I
Look at
agree.
us.
Mhm.
It just makes sense, Courtney. It just makes sense.
Yes, it does. It makes sense. And it might go against what a leader might have a natural tendency to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you might just have to take a breath and just take a moment and say, I really want to get in there and tell this staff person how to load the proverbial dishwasher, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to just let them do it myself.
Because how did you learn to load the dishwasher? Leader in question. You
That's
had to
right.
load the dishwasher. You
Yeah.
had to
And then
put the
when it
cups
didn't
in
get
the wrong
clean,
place. You had to put plates upside down. You had to put the forks in a weird spot. You had to
yep,
mess it up and have a complete load not come out clean. That's how
that's
you learn.
right. That's right. Yeah. So give them a chance to make mistakes and not mistakes that are going to hurt someone or, bring the company down. Like we don't want
Right.
those kinds of mistakes, um
But
but
even
even
those mistakes, but even
yeah,
those mistakes,
even those.
you getting a fake traveler's check, having no clue what a traveler's check looked like, could have been seen as a large mistake. I'm sure that restaurant lost maybe a couple $100 on that order. Like, that's a big mistake, but it's not life or death. That is not a big mistake in the grand scheme of things. And I think rarely, I mean, in service organizations, sure, a big mistake can be a real big mistake. Everything is not life or death, and we should not treat it as such.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Allow for the small mistakes to happen. That's the
Yes.
takeaway message. Don't be a jerk. Let people make mistakes.
Let people make mistakes. We're just going to keep
Yeah.
adding them, adding up our nuggets of wisdom, Courtney. Well, I really
That's right.
appreciate you bringing all this information to us today. I think that it will make a lot of sense to nonprofit leaders to hear the research behind this. I hope that the stories that you told really resonate with people. And if you want to hear more about psych safety, or if there are other topics that you're interested in that we can talk about on the podcast, write a note in the comment section, send us an email. I'll put that information in the show run notes stuff. And yeah, just be good to your folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. This was a fun chat.
I think so too. Thanks, Court.
As always, our last segment of our podcast is our Ripples of Gratitude, where we show gratitude for someone or something in the hope that other people will be inspired to also show their gratitude. And Sarah, I am really sad to say that today, our last episode with our amazing producer, Nikki Collerich. So our Ripple of Gratitude today, I think, should definitely go to Nikki, who has been an absolutely wonderful producer and all things related to video editing and marketing. Just our amazing intern. Nikki is a student at Bellarmine, and she is going on. She's moving on to bigger and better things. She's going to be her fantastic tennis self and really focus on her sport for the spring. And I've been so incredibly amazed by Nikki's professionalism, her attitude. She is like so incredibly positive about everything that we ask her to do. I thank her for listening to all of us, listen. I thank her for listening to all of our faults, as you just heard right
Yes.
there, and working to like edit out things that we say that doesn't make sense. Like she has just been such a steadfast like backbone of this podcast since the
Yes.
beginning. And I am just so grateful that we've had Nikki as our producer.
I could not agree more with everything that you just said. Not only has Nikki been a fantastic podcast partner throughout all of this, you and I, when we started having conversations about doing this podcast and bringing it to a fruition, we're like, how are we going to do all these things that we don't know how to do? Well, the answer to that was bring in Nikki, because she is incredible. And I'm incredibly grateful for her, not only because of all the amazing things that she did on the podcast, but also because she really enlightened me to the benefits of nonprofits working with universities and students. It's been wonderful for me. I hope that she had a good experience. And just thank you a million times, Nikki. We appreciate you.
Yes, we so appreciate you. This podcast literally would not be what it is without Nikki's work. And we're very excited to have another wonderful student who's going to be interning with us soon for our future episodes. But yeah, we really have got to put out a big shout out and a big thank you to Nikki. It's not just, as you said, Sarah, it's not just about like editing the podcast, but like Nikki has been through it with us and all of
Mm-hmm.
these small decisions that we have had to make about things related to colors and fonts and logos and
Oh my
descriptions.
gosh.
And she has
I
listened.
cannot tell you, I cannot tell you how many logos poor Nikki had to look at before we settled on the logo that we chose. Like, yeah.
Yeah, because you and I both really care about this work that we're doing and we're so passionate about it. And we're both meticulous people who are very detail oriented. And Nikki is just like gone with all of that. She is just, yeah, seamlessly carried on with all of our asks and wants. And she's been amazing. So yeah, shout out to Nikki.
Shout out to Nikki. Go Bellarmine tennis.
Absolutely. We're going to cheer Nikki on from the sidelines as
Absolutely.
she moves on to doing her tennis work.
Yes. Fan for life. Thanks, Nikki.
Yep.
Thank you all for listening to today's episode. The Burnout Room is sponsored by the Kentucky Psychological Foundation. If you'd like to support our work by bringing free mental health resources to nonprofits in Kentucky, please consider donating at kentuckypsychologicalfoundation.org.
And for the last time, a huge thanks to our producer, Nikki Collerich, for all of her amazing work, and to Mike Russell, my dad, for composing our music.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for being a part of this community. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and feel free to let us know if there are topics that would be helpful for you and your organization in the comments below.
We'll see you next time.